Behavioural economics on a post-it 10. The decoy effect. The decoy effect is related to the independence axiom that I talked about in relation to the Allais paradox way back in behavioural economics on a post-it number 1. And that is that, essentially, it is that in standard economic theory, it's assumed that people place a value upon any good or service, right? They place this kind of psychological value upon a particular good, say it's a car or a chocolate bar or anything, right? And in standard economic theory, standard rational choice theory, it's assumed that if people are then presented with another option in addition to the initial option that they were faced with, then that other option in itself shouldn't affect the psychological value that people place upon that first option. But when we look at actual human behaviours, that assumption is very often violated. It very often doesn't actually hold up in real human decision-making behaviours. And the decoy effect is what's called the decoy effect is perhaps an example of that. So on this particular post-it note, I've drawn a very simple hypothetical example. So let's revert to my piece of paper again. So imagine that you are in the market to buy a new computer. And I've listed the computers here, a new laptop, as A and B. You're only interested, assume that you're only interested in the price of the laptop and its memory storage capacity. So there's two options available to you, let's assume. Option A would cost you £400 and it has 300, I'll put 300 gigabytes there. Let's just assume hypothetically that that's a good thing. And there's option B. You could go for laptop B if you want. It's cheaper. It's £300 rather than £400. But it has less memory, only has 200 gigabytes. So imagine that you're somebody that, that you only want your laptop for quite sort of basic reasons, basic processing. So you're more attracted to the lower price. So just assume that you go for, you trade off the price, you trade off having a bit more memory for the lower price, essentially. So you go for B. Let's assume that, right? So I've said there, if you're in that situation, B seems to be the better deal, perhaps for you, right? But now let's add what's called a decoy, laptop C, right? Now laptop C here, A and B are exactly the same as before. Laptop C costs £450, and it has 250 gigabyte storage capacity. So if you compare A with C, you can see that C is both more expensive and has less capacity. That is to say that if you were only considering these two attributes, laptop A would, what's known as, dominate laptop C. It's both cheaper and has greater storage capacity, the two things that you're interested in, right? So if you were presented with A, B and C, it might be then that A all of a sudden appears to be relatively good value for money because C as an option has been introduced and C is dominated by A, right? Now, because C all of a sudden appears to be relatively good value for money, although you chose B over A when C wasn't an option, the supposedly irrelevant C, according to standard rational choice theory, makes A to you to seem to be a relatively good deal. And that might prompt you to choose A over B and C in this instance. You've essentially, with the introduction of C, if you acted in this way, if you chose in this way, you would have reversed your preferences from B over A to A over B, right? And that's not allowed in standard rational choice theory, right? The introduction of C shouldn't alter the intrinsic psychological valuation that you place upon A and B, but it appears to have done that, right? So that's all I've written there. So that could reverse your preferences. There's plenty of real life examples of the decoy effect if you look out for them in your daily lives. The money savings expert Martin Lewis himself essentially wrote about the decoy effect and talked about the decoy effect. I think it was last year. And he was intrigued, I think, by noticing in his local supermarket that a 20-pack, a 20-piece pack of Jaffa cakes and a 10p pack of Jaffa cakes were both priced at £1 and placed next to each other, which made the 20-piece pack appear to be relatively good value for money. You know, you've seen these two packs next to each other, you get twice as many Jaffa cakes for the same price. So that sort of placement of that not very good value for money Jaffa cakes, the 10-pack, might prompt people to choose the 20-pack Jaffa cakes, 20-piece pack Jaffa cakes, even if they don't really want the Jaffa cakes. They might not even particularly like Jaffa cakes, but it might be prompted into thinking that they're relatively good value for money. So so the lesson there, I suppose, is if you're sort of wandering around your supermarkets and you see examples of essentially the decoy effect in place, just really think hard about whether you want the item that appears, because of the decoy effect, appears to be relatively good value for money.